let's get to it. The next section that I'd like to run through will also be a writing section, but it will be a kind of guided process through the path of creating a Zettel. This is, I think, the heart of the idea that we've been getting to for a few weeks. And I'm going to hand over to Beau, who's going to run this session and run you through it. Beau, are you around? Beau.
Yes, hi.
Hey, firstly, thanks very much. Very generous with the sessions that you've been running one-on-one over the week. Really becoming kind of the book club Zettel expert, which is excellent. Let's help us through it. Can you please help us through the process of creating the Zettels, with the goal ultimately to create as many as we can this week that we can use to remix and show Zonka next week as well. So Beau, over to you.
Well, if you look at it, we have 77 participants. If we can all nail one Zettel, we're at 100. So I'm going to go and share my screen here. Let me go and take a look. There we go. Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and go to my page. So I'm just going to go ahead and write Beau Haan. And if you go to your page, and if you want, you can make a namespace just by hitting the slash if you want a clean slate. So I'm just going to go in Beau Haan Zettels here. And then you should see sort of your page at the top and then a little empty block here. What I'd like to do is I'd like to go into the search bar here. And if you go here and you type in guided writing exercise, if you see this one right here, if you shift click the bold, it's going to open it up in the sidebar. So shift click, it'll open it up in the sidebar. Now there's some directions in how to sort of bring this template over so we can all sort of have like, not a convention, but just an easy way for us to sort of see it and follow along. So you have three different ways. You can right click on this bullet point here. You can do copy block reference, or you can option or alt drag, and then that'll bring it over as well. Or you can just copy this link below and then paste it to your page here. And then if you hit escape twice, you go ahead and see template apply children as text. Now, if you hover over this, because it's a block reference, if you hover over this and you click and you see this little arrow, if you click on this, you can actually apply children as text. And what it's going to do, it's going to go and provide 3 places where you can provide answer to these 3 questions that we're going to walk through here. And then you can go ahead and close this sidebar once you're done with that. So hit that little X and it'll close it. And then just with hands raised, is there anyone that's getting stuck on this part? Again, if you don't have access to the shared graph, you can just go ahead and copy paste the text that's located in guided writing exercise. Just copy paste this right here.
Oh, a few hands went up. Then let's run through that again and let people.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and go to your page first. So Beau Haan writing Zettels. Let me go ahead and delete this. So if you go to your page here, type in your first name, your last name, and then if you want to do a namespace, you can do a namespace. If you want a clean sort of slate, and I'm just going to call it Beau Haan /Zettels. If you hit enter, it's going to go and open up in your main page here. And then what you want to do is you want to open another sidebar page here. So if you go back to the find or create page, just type in guided writing exercise, and it should be the first one that pops up. If you click shift click, so hold shift and then click on guided writing exercise, it'll open it up in the sidebar. And then what you can do is you can copy this link right here. And then what you want to do is you want to paste it into your page, your namespace page. If you paste it here, what you have is this weird sort of number here, this unique identifier. And if you hit escape twice, you'll actually see that it populates it with this text here. And what we want to do is we want to hover over it because it's a block reference. You click on it, and then you do apply children as text. And what it's going to do, it's going to populate underneath with the actual text here. So that way there's some sort of format that we can follow so everyone will write the answers on the same area. And then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and click the X in the sidebar, and then I'll close that. If you're having problems with this, just go ahead and do your best to sort of follow along in your own graph. And then if you have any questions, we can just jump on a call later and I'll walk you through it as well. So then the first question here. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and open up. You'll notice here, right? Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So if you'll notice from this template here, right, you have question number 2 and you have chapter 14, paragraph 6. What this is this links to the source material. So if you hold shift and you click chapter 14, paragraph 6, 6, it's going to go and open that in the sidebar. And so again, this is a block of text from the book, How to Take Smart Notes. Again, so how you do that, let me just show you one more time, is if you hold shift and then you click on chapter 14, paragraph 6, it'll open it up in the sidebar. And if you guys are power users, this is child's play for you, but again, let's just walk through it together here. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to just take a look at this block of text. And well, before I even begin that, I'd like to say one thing as well. I do want to mention, can everyone see, by the way? Is the screen not working right now?
Yeah, it's just gone black.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look now. Let me stop sharing 1 second. I'm going to share it again. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go and share the screen one more time. And that should be good. Again, so now if you shift click on chapter 14, paragraph 6, it'll open it up in the sidebar. Again, if you're having problems with it, just write it in your shared graph or your own graph, and then we'll sort of work with it from there. Again, obviously my computer is not working right now. Let me go in and stop sharing. Are you able to see me at all? No? Let me try this again. Technical difficulties. Got to roll with the punches here. So what I'd like to do is if you can go into, you can see now though. So if you go into question 1 right here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just sort of walk through a guided writing exercise. And so basically I'm going to go in and read through this text here, or you can read it on your own as well. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to just ask questions of what resonates with you. So I guess I'll go ahead and start by just reading the paragraph aloud. Chapter 14, make it a habit. The trick is not to try to break with old habits and also not to use willpower to force oneself to do something else, but to strategically build up new habits that have a chance to replace the old ones. The goal here is to get into the habit of fetching pen and paper whenever we read something, to write down the most important and interesting aspects. If we manage to establish a routine in this first step, it becomes much easier to develop the urge to turn these findings into permanent notes and connect them with other notes in the slip box. It is not difficult to get used to thinking within an external memory of notes, as the advantages become obvious quite quickly. As soon as we have developed a new routine, we can do what intuitively feels right, which requires no effort. Watching others reading books and doing nothing other than underlining some sentences or making unsystematic notes that will end up nowhere will soon be a painful sight. So what I'd like to do is, if you click on this little block, the child block underneath question 1, click into this block here, you can just go in, if you can, it's going to be a guided writing exercise. So I'm just going to go ask some questions, and then you can always refer back to the source material on the sidebar as well. But I'd like to just sort of go through this sort of writing exercise that's a little bit guided. So the first question is, what resonates with you as I read this text? And you can just start typing away in your own box here. And what resonated with you? What was, what is this? What else does this remind you of? And as you go through, just go ahead and type, and I'm going to go and do it as well.
Can you show the text, Beau?
Of course. You mean the whole text?
As in the block, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste what I already wrote so I can help guide you guys along. Again,
So,
as you're, yes.
So the goal, Beau, is to kind of summarize this, take kind of fleeting notes from this paragraph. Is that what you mean?
Well, let me just walk it through.
Okay.
It'll all make sense in a bit. So again, as you're writing here, just go and start writing. You can indent as you go, but just what are the things that are resonating with you as you read the sort of source material? What are the associations that come to mind? What else does this remind you of? Can you pull out an abstraction from that? That's not necessarily literally coming from the text itself, but what are the sort of like popping associations that are sort of happening as you're reading that text? You can go back to the source material, you can read it again. Certain words may pop out, like, what does willpower mean to you? What does strategy mean to you? How about routine? What resonates with you when I say these words? How about advantages? What are times where you developed a new routine and you stuck with it? And as you're thinking about that time, what did it feel like to intuitively know what to do next, where it didn't require effort? What are some associations that are sort of happening as you think about this? You can refer back to the text because you still have it in the sidebar. Can you pull out an abstraction from that? What else does this remind you of? You think about conversations, and you think about how conversations can go from Robert Frost or David Foster Wallace to Frosted Flakes. How does that work? What are the associations that are coming to mind as you're reading this text and sort of not necessarily looking at the text itself, but the ideas that are sort of popping. And as you're going here, I'd like to, we don't have much time. Again, typically I have like 2 hours to go through this with people, but we're going to sort of rush through this. Again, if you have any questions, shoot me an email and we can jump on a call for sure. So as you're finishing up here with just writing this block of text, you know, what else resonates with you? You can always go back, but just what else resonates with you? And as you're finishing that, let's get to an end, bring it to a close. And as you bring it to a close, I'd like for you to watch the screen. You'll watch my arrow here. And if you click on this to edit this block here at the top parent block level, right? So don't click in it, but if you click on this block here, you can hit a space. And what I'd like for you to do is just write a summary of what you wrote here. Write a little summary. So if you close this bullet point, if you collapse it, you're able to understand what you wrote that resonated with you underneath. So it could be 1 sentence, it could be 2 sentences, but just a nice way to summarize what you wrote here. I'm cheating because I'm copy pasting, but how would you summarize what you wrote? So you can take a thumbnail. So basically, how can you make a summary that's like a thumbnail of the higher resolution image that's hidden underneath? So okay, this would be like the.
Yeah. Can you just give us a minute to try and do that? And we'll, like, as in, I'll try and write the summary now. So just maybe 30 seconds or a minute for people to do that, just to keep it going on track.
To write the summary here, yeah? Yeah, that's the idea. So if you close this bullet point, you still have a sort of thumbnail image.
A bit of silence just to, not to cut you off, just so they can actually write for a bit. Just 30 seconds to actually do some writing.
Yeah, you're telling me to shut up. That's what I hear you saying. Be quiet. Let them write. Let them write.
On hold music.
Yeah.
The purpose of this is to sort of abstract out the associations that are coming to mind as you're reading this block of text. And remember, this is the work. It's not easy, but it's simple. We're going to start moving into this question number 2, but you can come back to this. And now you have this beautiful sort of summary on top on the block that says question 1. Underneath, you have this big wall of text that you can open and close with a bullet point. Now we're going to go up to question number 2. In the child block underneath question number 2, I'd like to ask a different question. And this is going to be in regards directly to the source material here. Directly to the source, and this child block underneath, being informed of what you abstracted here, what is the author saying? And how can you write that in your own words without summarizing to prove to yourself that you've understood what they're saying? I'm just going to go and show you an example. I cheated. I did this earlier. This is a sort of litmus test to see how well you understand.
Oh, can you repeat what you just said?
Yes, of course. So this part here, so this child block underneath question number 2, these blocks here, if you being informed by what you abstracted below, sort of box structure, being informed by this, how can you, being informed by what you abstracted, what is the author saying now? How can you write that in your own words without summarizing to prove to yourself? It's sort of a litmus test to prove to yourself that you've understood what they're saying here. How much time do I have, Matt? 5 minutes?
About 12 minutes, bro.
12? Oh, wow. Plenty of time. Again, this is the difficult part. You're abstracting what the author is saying, being informed by what you wrote below from this bottom-up structure. And then how can you reiterate, synthesize what the author has said in your own words? How can you prove that you understand what the author is saying and utilize the tools that Rome offers as well? Everything's at the block level. You can go back and see what you abstracted underneath for question 1. In the sidebar, you have the source material there as well. And as you're finishing up, I'd like to focus now on question number 3. So as you finish up on question number 2, let's go ahead and click into the block question number 3, make a little space. And now what I'd like to do is, this question is going to be taking everything that you've already sort of abstracted and taken apart and wrestled with this idea of bottom-up structure. And on this question number 3, the question is being informed by the fleeting notes, or being informed by question 1, being informed by question number 2, and also having the availability of the evidence or source material to your sidebar. What is a statement, a clear statement that you can say about what you've synthesized? How can you word this statement in a way that gives you the most clarity in what you mean? And I say that because if you look at the root word of declarative, it's actually Latin for clarere, which is where we get the word clarity from. Being informed by question number 1, being informed by question number 2, having the source material in the sidebar. What is a clear statement that you can say about what you've synthesized in your own words? Keep this to about a sentence or 2. There's no rules. This is Zettelcasting. Question number 3 might take a little bit of editing. I went through probably 2 or 3 iterations before I was clear on what I was saying. Just to keep that in mind. And as you wrestle with this question number 3, remember that we want to have the conversation at question number 3, after we've synthesized from an evidence, from the source, and the multiple levels of abstraction from question number 1. This is the work. It's not easy, but it's simple. And for those that are finished and happy with the clarity that they've synthesized, if you want to highlight the text outside of question number 3, just highlight this text. And if you do double open bracket and hit enter, it'll make it into a page. I'll do it one more time. If you're finished with question number 3, you can just follow along in my share screen. I'm going to do something. It's not letting me. Hold on.
But they have been turning off certain features in this edition for multiplayer, so they may have turned that off as well.
Perfect. So if you are following along, if you just highlight question 1, and you change this to fleeting notes, you'll see the CSS. If you go to question number 2, you type in literature notes, you'll see this here. If you open the source material in this sidebar, you'll notice that you'll have 48 references, and with one click, you can see everybody's literature notes without having to click again, frictionless. And you have space for more because we're not limited to the 3x5 index card. You can have more abstractions in your literature notes. And if you go to question number 3, you type in Zettels, the capital Z. And if you've bracketed this page that you wrote out, you've created yourself a permanent note. The beauty of it is that it's bottom-up structure. First level of abstraction at your fleeting note stage. Second level of abstraction, your fleeting note summary. Third level of abstraction, your literature note. And the beauty of Rome is that you have the source material by shift clicking into the sidebar with your permanent note as the parent block. Do I have one more minute, Matt?
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate one idea. It's the power of analogies. And as people, if Zettelkasten was a pot where you throw your vegetables in, your potatoes and your carrots, I don't think they did it out of malevolence, but as this pot and the lid was open, other people have thrown other ideas in there. And there's one of these ideas that is sort of intrigued me, and it's this idea of the analogy of seedlings, budding notes, and evergreen notes. And if you think about that, what that does is it instantiates meaning that might not be beneficial for Zettelkasten, and that's that idea of time. Because seedlings take time to grow. Budding notes take time to grow. Evergreen notes take time to grow. But the purpose of the Zettelkasten is to slam all three of these phases together as quickly as possible, so our conversation happens at the Zettel level. And so if I could instantiate a new analogy that might be a little bit more powerful, it's this idea of the three phases of all matter. What I mean by that is you have these fast moving gas particles, and they're fast moving. It's high heat, fast moving particles. And if you can start capturing those fast moving fleeting notes, and you can sort of slow down the particles, slow down the molecules, it starts becoming a liquid, and it'll sort of dropping. But liquid without a container is useless. So if we had a container called evidence, or the source material, or your bibliography, you could capture these fast moving particles and slow down these thoughts into a liquid, contain a container called the reference notes. And if you're able to take this liquid and slow down and crystallize these thoughts even more into a solid state permanent note, I think it might deem interesting to sort of look at it in that regards, to quickly get from gas, liquid, solid, fleeting, literature, permanent notes, so we can start having the discussion that everyone desires, or this conversation partner, at the permanent note level. And I'm done.
All right, excellent, Beau. Thank you very much. Yeah, very detailed process with a lot of different steps, and nice to see the process from the bottom up, which really is highlighted as a big part of the book, like an inductive approach to making sense of a book, as opposed to a deductive sense of starting with an idea in mind. So very much following the progress of book club itself, how we've worked through the phases over the last few weeks. And I agree, Matt, now that we're kind of getting to this particular structure, we can have this at the front of next book club.
Matt,
For those,
I have a question. Do you mind if I ask a quick question of Beau? Because I went through the session and I've really been trying to wrap my mind around this process. And there's one question that keeps niggling at the back of my mind that
sure,
may be helpful for others as well. So my question, Beau, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. My question is that the way this is presented is very linear. Fleeting notes become literature notes, or sort of our sister to literature notes, and then they TP together into Zettels. And I get that, although it strikes me that I may have fleeting notes that are never related to Zettels, that are cool to just leave as fleeting notes. And same with literature notes that may never bubble up to Zettels. And I really would like to summarize and keep the idea kind of around, but not have it point at a Zettel. So from that perspective, they can be orphaned, so to speak. We can have all of these different layers. Can then we have a Zettel that does not have literature notes or fleeting notes, just an idea that bubbled up that has no substantiated support yet?
Of course. And in the book, Sonke talks about it very clearly. I can find the exact reference here. The purpose of this sort of slip box Zettelkasten, you have one place where the discussion actually happens. And you want to make sure that the dialogue that happens there is with a formidable dialogue partner, evidence-based with multiple levels of abstraction. What I hear you saying is that you want to have a place where these thoughts can percolate and live. And this is where the instantiation of project notes come into place. So you have these place, and this could be to-dos, this could be ideas on manuscripts, but you keep a firewall between that and your actual dialogue partner. And in these project notes, they're sort of like building blocks. They're ideas that haven't been fully developed yet. And what you do is if you have a place where it can live, you can go back and engage with it. And then you might be able, once you find a source as you're reading along, as you're asking yourself these questions, you can bring it back into the main dialogue partner, if that makes sense. But I can find you the exact reference in the book where he talks about project notes being a place where, again, you can sort of have these notes as you're talking about.
I might just add that that's kind of the power of Rome in a sense too. If you had a manual Zettelkasten on index cards, that you wouldn't be able to really do that effectively. But clearly in Rome, you can just tag it in a different way and have all of that fleeting notes or literature notes still live in your database separately from your Zettelkasten. The only thing I would say is, like, you want to avoid a Zettelkasten that is generic aphorisms or vague aphorisms like the fortune cookie idea. You really want them to be effective in a way that you can show some evidence for them. Think of yourself as a lawyer, because as Mike mentioned last week, if you go back to your Zettelkasten in 20 years, and I think the example he gave was bechamel sauce and Zettelkasten as the link, you want to be able to know how you got those two things together and how that kind of link was made. So keep that in mind too. Make sure it's evidence-based, or at least you have some lineage to a previous thought. Excellent, Beau. Many thanks for those. That that was a detailed process, Beau, and excellent to see. Beau, you're going to put that in a video just for people to watch later, or it's available now in the graph?
I'll put it up later, and then I'll also at 3 p.m. California time, I'll go ahead and just take a look at the daily notes page for the shared graph, and I'll go ahead and put a link for one-on-one coaching sessions as well for this coming up week, if you have further questions, or you can just shoot me an email as well. But yes.
Very generous. Thank you, Beau. Well done. Thanks.